Welcome to Let's Face It. I'm Lorraine Croston, wellness coach at Eating Evolution. My guest today is Jennifer White. She's the owner and operator of BarefootVeggies. Forget your traditional garden. It is possible to grow food in a small urban space and for it to look good too. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm really glad that you could join me today.
Thank you for having me.
The edible landscaping, well, how is that different from gardening?
You're able to actually eat what you grow. So you're able to actually grow your flowers but have beautiful foods such as cabbages that come in a range of colors, and you can eat them as the season goes along.
So the difference, like I picture my parents' garden when I was growing up, and you had the rows and rows of stuff. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, edible gardens, well, that was an edible garden. So I'm not sure where your difference is.
It's incorporating your flowers with edible foods. So it's kind of a mix, or you can do container gardening depending on the size of the plot that you have. There's so many different ways to do it.
What would most people think is like sort of a limitation on growing food? I mean, I look at my yard and it's really tiny. I think, oh my God, I can't possibly have fruit and vegetables in there. Am I just wrong?
It does depend on the size and especially the sun exposure in your area, but you can have vertical growing gardens on balconies and small townhouses like that. There's way to grow up and maximize on the space you do have, but the main limitation is depending which way you face the sun. That's the only one I can see. Yes.
Sun is your big limiting factor. So if your backyard is really shaded, don't really consider a lot of fruit and vegetables in the backyard.
Certain ones, yes. Certain ones, like your leafy greens, will grow really well in shaded areas, but I mean, tomatoes and cucumbers, things like that, they need more sun essentially to keep them dried out.
Obviously, from the shade point of view, that's a limitation. You really can't do too much about it. But what about some of you mentioned doing vertical landscape or vertical gardens in small areas and balconies. What would be other kinds of limitations that people think that may or may not actually be a limitation?
Just the know-how of how to grow and what to look for and how to care for things. There is something called companion planting where there's several different types of vegetables that protect each other from bugs and disease, and they do really well together. It all depends on what you want as well. Like if you want tomatoes with cucumbers, well, they don't really grow so well with each other, so you need to separate them, and container gardening is good for that reason. Because you could even use the big totes or something and kind of move them around with the sun, and there's so many different
ideas. There's something I hadn't considered, is that if you put them in a container, oh gee, you could just move them.
In my mind, there's not many limitations to gardening. You just need to be very careful of what you plant together, so they're not, so the plants aren't killing each other off and attracting the wrong bugs. Space doesn't really matter. I find the only thing that really matters is if you have the proper sunlight available.
Cucumber. And all I think of is that it takes up an awful lot of space. Or if you go with the squash or you go with zucchini, how do you do that is that where you get your vertical?
Yeah, that's because I have limited space in my farm. It's in a residential area. I am going vertical with everything, but it creates you can make really pretty trellises, and like the flowers are gorgeous, and you can even eat their flowers too.
That's true.
But going vertical and maximizing on the space that you do have, it all comes down to planning. Everything kind of works with each other if you do it right. It's very low maintenance. Yes, you have the weed.
Oh, wait. You said the magic words. It can be very low maintenance
and very cost effective.
When you're talking about, let's say, a balcony or a very small sunny backyard, what types of plants would work best in that area? In that area?
I'd say peas and beans, climbing things. Definitely your salads and spinach. Swiss chard, I don't think I could kill that stuff if I tried. And things like that, you cut them at the roots and they grow back. Like so.
Oh, so you cut them right down to the soil and up they come again?
Yes, within like a week and a bit. Like
wow.
I mean, not
okay.
full plants, but you can see the growth really quickly, and it's kind of neat. Most people have a garden because they enjoy doing that. Some people they find it very relaxing to go out into the garden, and even weeding for half hour. It's nice to be outside and just after a long day at work and being inside.
Yes.
It's
I agree on that one. Okay. Now we're talking about an edible garden, but your typical garden, you want it have it so that it looks interesting at various times. So what would you do to make that, maybe like, let's say a front yard garden that has a mix of flowers and plants? What types of things would you put in there to keep that interest going?
One example that I always think of is these purple cauliflowers, like the big bright purple cauliflowers. Their leaves are beautiful. There's things like kaleidoscope Swiss chard, which is very bright colors, and again, the stuff is so hardy. Your broccoli and cauliflowers will last. Oh geez, I probably had mine until Christmas this year.
Holy, well, yeah, it was a good fall.
It was a very good fall. So, but when you bring in those colorful plants, it just adds interest to it, and it goes with whatever flowers you may have. Like your sweet peas, like they're beautiful climbers with nice pink flowers and white flowers.
Actually, you just brought up a good point. Is that the nice thing about doing the edible gardens is, and starting from seeds, is you get a greater variety available to you than you would ever get from going to the grocery store and buying it, or even perhaps going to a farmer's market, because you can pick and choose exactly what it is you like.
Things like your lettuce and things like that's something you would have a salad every night with dinner occasionally, So being able to go out, pick what you want.
When we're talking about the whole edible landscaping, I know that I'm hoping that that's going to change, but a lot of municipalities have bylaws that prevent you from doing gardens in your front yard. Is doing an edible landscape a way to incorporate the food without making it look like your typical row garden? So you kind of can use, is that a good way to
go
play within the rules?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I've had a very hard time finding information on what the rules are. It should be no different than a flower garden. Like, you already have it landscaped and hardscaped and things like that. Like, why not put food into it? If food is so expensive right now, like vegetables it's crazy expensive. And in my area where I am, it's a lot of townhouses with low-income families, and it's those people that need to grow their own. Like, it's very simple to do if, with a few instructions. And
the weird thing is everyone used to.
Yeah, like they
We've
can't
lost it.
afford to buy vegetables, therefore people are unhealthy. Well, learn how to grow your own, and kind of cuts out two problems. You're saving more money, and you know where your food's coming from.
Jennifer brings up a lot of really good points. Let's face it, we used to grow a lot of our own foods. We've gotten away from it, but I think it's really time to bring it back, and even better, bring it back so that it's pretty. And yet it's going to be something that can feed you, feed your family, and you know where the source of the food is and how healthy it is. More tip to take away for the viewers.
First off, I'd like to thank you for having me on your show. One tip I do have, and something that's extremely easy to grow, is what I call a salad bowl. Put your spinach and your lettuce in it, stick it in a windowsill, and within a few days you actually have sprouts growing, and that can last you potentially all summer if you look after it, because you just clip your leaves off and take what you need, and it will just keep growing and growing, and eventually it will reseed itself, and they can even come back the very next year. As well as herbs. Herbs are very easy to do, and they reseed themselves to come back very, very easily. So if you want to start small, that's your lettuce and spinach, and your herbs.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you all joining us for this edition of Let's Face It. I'm Lorraine Croston. See you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'll get it right.
To learn about different types of bugs that affect things, but on my website I do have
Shoot.
that information.
Let's try that one again.
Okay.